हरे राम 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 सीता राम 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 हरे राम 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 सीता राम 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 सीता राम 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 हरे राम 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 सीता 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 राम राम राम। सियावर रामचंद्र की जय, पवन सुत हनुमान की जय, बोलो भाई सब संतन की जय। श्री राम जय जय राम। लाउडली श्री राम जय जय राम। 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 प्रिय सियावर रामचंद्र की जय, पवन सुत हनुमान की जय, बोलो भाई सब संतन की जय, सद्गुरुनाथ महाराज की जय। जय जय राम जानकी राम। 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 रघुकुल भूषण राजा राम। रघुकुल भूषण राजा राम। रघुकुल भूषण राजा राम। रघुकुल भूषण राजा राम। जय जय राम जानकी राम। जय जय राम जानकी राम। श्री राम जय जय 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 राम। जय जय राम जानकी राम। जय जय राम जानकी राम। जय
Hari Om everyone. Can you all see me and hear me clearly? Awesome. Thank you. So, in this particular class, we are talking and discussing about ātmabodha, and we have seen till the 11th shloka. Today is we have seen till the 12th shloka. 13th and 14th is what we'll be looking into today. And the pattern is first Brahmacharini Divya will speak for 10 minutes, then Hari will speak for 10 or 15 minutes each, and then I will consolidate the whole thought and wrap it up in the last half an hour. We'll start with 3 Oms, Sahanavavatu Guru Brahma, and then invite Hari to do the invocation shloka of this, and then lead and repeat the 2 shlokas for today, and then Divya will come. सहनाववतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै ॐ शान्तिः 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 गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णुः गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुरेव परं ब्रह्मा तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः
तपोभिक्षीणपापानां शान्तानां वीतरागिणां मुमुक्षूणामपेक्ष्योऽयम् आत्मबोधो विधीयते. 13. paṃcaprāṇamanobuddhidaśendriyasamanvitam.
paṃcaprāṇamanobuddhidaśendriyasamanvitam
apaṃcīkṛtabhūtotthaṃ.
apaṃcīkṛtabhūtotthaṃ
sūkṣmāṅgaṃ bhogasādhanam.
sūkṣmāṅgaṃ bodhasadhanam
anādyavidyā'nirvācyā.
anādyavidyā'nirvācyā
kāraṇopādhirucyate.
kāraṇopādhirucyate
upādhitritayādanyam.
upādhitritayādanyam
ātmānamavadhārayet.
atmānamavadhārayet. Thank you, Hari.
Hari Om, can you hear me well? Excellent. So in the last couple of verses, we are seeing that the self is not understood well because we have identified with our upadhis. And so now we are seeing from, I think, about verse 11 through 15, the different upadhis and investigating them specifically. So in this verse, we are investigating the subtle body, the sūkṣmāṅgaṃ, this subtle body, which constitutes the paṃcaprāṇamanobuddhidaśendriyasamanvitam. Samanvitam means that it's combined. It's a compilation of all of these different organs or things that we see. And it is also mentioned that it is apaṃcīkṛtabhūtotthaṃ, that it is formed from the rudimentary elements. Last time we had seen that we have the 5 elements that go through paṃcaprāṇa, the separation and mutual recombination of the elements. But our subtle body is made before that process. And it is bhogasādhanam. It is the instrument of experience. So we'll dive in a little bit deeper in these concepts. So there's vast differences in the subtle body equipment from plants, animals, and human beings. But behind all of these variations of the subtle body, there is one force that animates all of these equipments. So again, we have to come back to the question of, if I'm seeing oneness of existence, where are these different experiences, both within myself and the variations outside, coming from? And again, it's the upadhis. So here, upadhis is given as prana, as the first component of the subtle body. Prana, again, is not supposed to be understood as just a mechanical breathing. This is the manifestation and life forces that is behind the way the body functions. So again, there are 5 departments of life activities. I like that description that Gurudev gave. 5 departments of life activities. Prana, apana, samana, vyana, and udana. That's the order given in Gurudev's commentary. But of course, when we do Brahmarpanam before, it's prana sva, apana sva, vyana sva, udana sva, samana sva. So just pay attention to sometimes the variations in order. But prana is I would call it like the input, but it says that it controls the sense organs. This is the force that allows us to perceive things from the outside. Apana is as I've heard, the exit strategy, that once the input is given, processed, there is leftover waste and that has to be ushered out. That is the force of the apana. Samana is that digestive process, that I'm able to extract what's necessary, convert it into versions that I need, and then prepared for distribution. And vyana is that distribution process, that it is able to give with justice the amount that each body part needs at that given moment. So for example, I have a different distribution when I'm sleeping versus different distribution of that energy when I'm walking or working. So that justice, right? It does it justice, is the process of distribution of the vyana. Udana is I call it the reversal or upheaval process. So from a body standpoint, anytime we have process like burping, sneezing, that's something to upheave something that's already naturally happening, that is udana. But it is also any upward movement. And it can also come all the way to the point of raising our mind to higher knowledge, convictions, and experiences. That is also considered as part of the udana force. So we've seen the paṃcaprāṇas, mano and buddhi. So the pranas are, I guess you could say, the channels or functional avenues, but the mind and intellect is the command center. So the example that's given is that New Delhi is the headquarters of Indian government, or you could say Washington, D.C. is the headquarters of the US government, right? So in the same way, the mind and intellect is that headquarters, literally headquarters. But when we have these organs that are perceiving things from the outside world, if our mind and intellect are not present to connect with it, then there's no perception that's happening. So the best example is if you watch someone who's zoned out, their eyes are wide open, they're staring at a piece of paper or the page that they're looking at, but there's this hazy look in their eyes because their mind isn't connected with their organ of vision. So that connection has to be there. That consciousness has, or again, it's not capital C consciousness, it's the lower C consciousness. I have to cognize what I'm actually perceiving. And that's the function of the mind and intellect. And like I said before, that this subtle body is made from the rudimentary tanmatras. This is before we've gone through the process of paṃcaprāṇa. And one thing that caught my attention when we come to that last part is bhogasādhanam. If I go back to the previous verse, I see for the gross body is described as bhoga-ayatanam, whereas here it's bhogasādhanam. So what's the difference? So I like the specific word that Gurudev has used, that the gross body is considered as the hall of experience, whereas the subtle body is the instrument of experience. So even then the rishis have been able to are very subtle in their understanding of what experience is. That the gross body is just the mechanism by which I'm taking all the input, but my subtle body is the one that is the instrument that actually processes that input. And so it is only with the mind and intellect that I can experience pleasure and pain. So it's very important to pay attention to the Sanskrit words that are given. Bhoga ayatanam versus bhoga sadhanam. So now we'll go to the next verse. In this verse, we're now going to the causal body, which is kāraṇopādhirucyate, anādyavidyā'nirvācyā, that it is beginningless ignorance and it is indescribable. And they're describing avidya to us in this verse. Atmabodha upādhitritayādanyamātmānamavadhārayet. Sorry. So the last part says that the Atman should be understood that it is other than these three conditionings. So now again, we'll come back to what is avidya. Avidya is when truth is not known. Avarna is when that reality is veiled to us. Vikshepa is when we naturally misinterpret that reality through misdirected imaginations. And adhyasa is the delusionary projections that are there. So when Atman is veiled by ignorance, we misapprehend it as the various layers of matter. Then we identify with those layers of matter, and there arises my sense of individuality and ego, which then suffers all the ups and downs of samsara. So again, both non-apprehension and misapprehensions are both needed to create the conditions of relative joy. So here, avidya is now the causal body. It gives rise to the desires in the intellect, thoughts in the mind, and actions in the body. So it is that the subtle body and gross body are the products of avidya, which is why it's the causal body, kāraṇopādhi. Now it is said that there are two concepts. It is said that it is beginningless, and that requires us to understand two concepts. What makes an experience, and how do I measure time? So in order to experience something, I need three things: the experiencer, the experienced, and the experiencing. Experiencer is the subtle body we just saw, the mind and intellect. The experienced is the objects of the world. And there I need to have a right relationship between the experiencer and the experienced in order to even have the process of experiencing. So that's my three-part unit for understanding what an experience is. Now coming to the concept of time. You can almost equate it to how we analyze distance. You need 2 points in order to even measure distance. In the same way, in order to measure time, we need 2 points of experiences. 2 points of experiences to measure time. So when the first experience ends, it gives rise to the beginning of the next experience. Then you can have the first unit of measurement of time. Now we come to why is it called as beginningless? Although the first experience is an experience and you require the 3 components we saw, the experiencer, the experienced, and the experiencing. but I don't have that second point of experience. So at that point, I don't have time. So even before time is perceived, the created world must have come out to perceive it, and the equipments must also exist. So avidya is the causal body for the subtle and gross envelopments, and therefore cannot be qualified or measured by time by its own byproducts. Even though the equipments are all there, I don't have that second point of experience to say that there's a unit of time. And so I can't use the products of avidya to describe avidya. So both are said at this point. We understand why it's beginningless and anirvācyā. I can't describe it using the products of my, you can't describe the cause with the product of the cause. It doesn't work that way. So it takes some time to digest what avidya is, because it is that anirvācyā. But there's a warning given to us that ātmabodha, we're in pursuit of knowledge. We're not in pursuit of ignorance. Although it can be very tantalizing and a good mental gymnastics to figure out, how does avidya work? He gives a great example. It's like someone taking a torch, running into the darkness of night, trying to find darkness with that light. You can't do it. And it's also pointless. So instead of focusing on, the complexities and nature of avidya, let us focus on that this is, again, just an upādhi, the cause that veils the actual reality. All the other consequences come because of this. And we need to work past these upādhis to find that one existence and what is actually real. So with that, I will end there.
Thank you, Divya. Hari, floor is yours.
Hari Om. The problem that I have is my identification. Those entities that are fleeting, not even real, born of ignorance, I not only see them as real and get attached to them, not only do this for one lifetime, but I'm sitting here today because I've done that for countless janmas. That's why I find myself in this situation. Only through punya now, some type of punya we did before, are we at the stage where we're introduced to this knowledge where we don't have to be stuck in this rut. There is a way out of it. Now, the good news of this is nothing external then is keeping me from realizing this truth about myself. It's not that the stars have to align themselves a certain way and everything will be fine. It's not that I have to wait to a certain point, a certain age where I'll grow out of this misconception. Nothing external determines that. Prayatna is a big part of it, my own self-effort. That's the good news. But the bad news is, in understanding what this upādhi is, valiantly going through intellectually, tearing away every layer of this upādhi that I think I'm that, constantly reminding myself that I'm not, there are so many pitfalls in the way that can get in the way of that. That's the bad news. Now in this 13th shloka here, even after looking at the gross body and understanding that that's not me, that's only temporary, that has no effect on my true nature, the question still arises, what constitutes my experience? My own experience. Because no matter how different we look, it's the same organs that we all have. And if I'm sitting there and I walk outside and it's 50 degrees, I feel a sense of cold. Someone from up north or someone with a different disposition walks out, they could be wearing a t-shirt and shorts in that weather and be happy with it. It doesn't affect them that way. We all have the same types of bodies, though. What accounts for this difference then? The same music that's playing from a music system. I could love the song, the person next to me could not stand that song and wants to turn it off right away. The ears that are the same listening to that, there's some other mechanism going on that determines what that reaction of that person is. There's got to be something beyond just this gross body thing. Now, through that analysis, then we come to what this subtle body is. And subtlety is expressed in so many different ways. If we look at the elemental level, we see that if it's the earth, that's the element, then that's something we can hear, we can see, we can touch, taste, smell, we can do all of this to that earth. as we get subtler and subtler with the elements, when it comes to air, for instance, I can't see it, but I can feel it. When it comes to space, there's not even a feeling of it, but that's the only medium which allows me to hear. We get more subtle as we go with the elements. Similarly then, when it comes to the gross body and we go up to the subtle body, then that which I have less control over is subtle. Me blinking my eyes, I'm not thinking about it, but I'm doing it. There is a conscious entity, again, smaller case c, conscious entity that's doing that. When I walk, that's something I'm choosing to do. However, when it comes to prana, apana, vyana, udana, samana, imagine if after eating, you had to consciously digest your food. Not just something that happens, but you have to consciously do it. How awful would that be? Imagine if you didn't always think about breathing, you'd forget and you just stop breathing. We wouldn't think of anything else, then there'd be no chance. Therefore, not having control over these processes so much, that makes it more subtle. Another way of looking at it, when it comes to the organs of perception, to some extent, I can control the ahara, what comes in. I can close my eyes, I can walk away from a situation. But with these organs, then, organs of perception, hearing, I can't really control anything with that. If I'm in the vicinity somewhere, even though the monkeys close their ears like this, doing that won't do anything. That ahara will still go in, and thoughts will be created with that. Mind and intellect, also part of the subtle body. How much control do I have over those entities? Where if I say I don't want to think about a certain thought, it gives me pain, only that thought will come. I say I want to focus on something that's something I must think about, my thoughts will dissipate here and there. The control I have over these entities, frustratingly sometimes, is not very high. Now, this being the instrument of experience, the subtle body, that accounts for all the experiences in different reactions that I have, even if me and someone else is listening to the same thing, the gross body is doing that action. What reaction internally happens, that goes to the subtle body there. Now, logically, then, it can't stop at the subtle body. Because if I understand karma siddhanta, and I see that this subtle body must inhabit different gross bodies across janmas, there has to be some storehouse of these vasanas. There has to be some entity that gives rise to this subtle body, and in turn, the gross body. That's where we come to that causal body. Now, where does this causal body even come from? In the 14th shloka, then, we're introduced to an analysis of avidya, ignorance. And I had the same example that Divyaji just gave at the end of her segment there, where if I took someone and I said, show me darkness, show me where darkness is. Well, I can't really identify it. It's darkness. I can't see it. And say you light something to show it. It's like, if you notice the pujas that we've done lately, one problem that you can have in pujas with the vents and everything around is you turn a lighter on, the smallest breeze, indoor breeze that comes in, the lighter goes away. We found a new lighter. Swamiji did a great thing. This lighter, once you turn it on, it's like a welder's thing. It's awesome. The lamp never goes out. We can be in a hurricane, Swamiji will still be able to light the deepa for the puja, even in a hurricane. It's amazing. So a light that strongly, you light it, light eradicates darkness right away. Even to point to the darkness and say, this is where it is, there's no use anymore. In the same way then, if I'm looking for knowledge to enlighten ignorance, knowledge is viruddha of ignorance. It makes it go away. It doesn't light it at all. So then there comes the intellectual questions now. Two standpoints we can take. Ignorance is not a real entity, or ignorance is a real entity. Let's say we have to choose one here. So we go with ignorance is not a real entity. But then these three bodies are there. These three bodies are born of that avidya only, and I'm attached to them, of all things. How can I say ignorance is not some real entity? Now I can say these three bodies then are only apparently real. They're an upadhi that I'm assuming is my identity. They're fleeting. So then ignorance is only apparently there also. Now, what if I take this standpoint that ignorance is a real entity? Avidya is something that is real. From our definition of what real is and unreal is in Vedanta, only that ekam sat is the real entity. Because that is something that is there in all periods of time, in all circumstances. Here we're saying for realization to happen, that ignorance must be eradicated. Therefore, if I say ignorance is real, there's no chance at realization then, because ignorance was, is, and always will be. So it can't be either one of those. Now the example that the explanation given then for what ignorance is anirvācyā, that it's inexplicable. Why is it inexplicable? The whole reason I come to finding out the nature of ignorance is I need some explanation for the production of this phenomenal world around me. All these tangible things I'm seeing, all these emotions that I'm feeling, clarity that I sometimes have, oftentimes don't have, this has to come from somewhere. And so I want to find the answer saying, tell me exactly what this ignorance is. But when this whole thing is just a perception that I have that is unreal, that which it arose from must not have any kind of reality to it at all, only an apparent reality. Therefore, anirvācyā, inexplicability, is the answer given. Now, when we delve into certain topics like this, other technical questions arise. What is the origin of this avidya? When did it begin? About jivas, when is the first jiva? When did the first jiva come to rise? All these questions are things that we have. But if the ignorance itself is anirvachaniya, that which cannot be explained, how can I give a beginning to it at that point then? And as Divyaji pointed out, that question becomes moot in the grand scheme of things. Where religion, Hinduism in general, is attaining that moksha through the process of understanding what dharma is, pursuing kama and artha under the ambit of dharma in a responsible way, scrubbing myself of these vasanas. This kind of inquiry into what was ignorance's, what gave rise to the ignorance, how did it start, that really does nothing for me in my spiritual growth. And the equipment that I'm even using to understand that is only a product of that which is faulty itself. Therefore, how can I even get to understanding what that is? Using this equipment in the right way then, with the limited time that I have, to understand how to scrub these vasanas, understanding how to detach myself from this upadhi, that's the direction I have to take then. That's all I have.
Thank you, Hari. Hari Om. In this very beautifully authored book, can you all hear me clearly? In this beautifully authored book, which is an introductory text, Prakarana Grantha, Bhagavan Adi Shankaracharya ji is taking a little deeper step than what he introduced in the Tattva-bodha. For various things explained there, he gave one particular aspect or a reason and said, just so that the framework of logic is understood. Now, once the framework is understood, if you have ever sculpted, say, Ganesh ji or something with a clay, and when you do it, small 2 inches, 3 inches clay models, it is okay. But if it crosses 1 foot, that is when the structure requires a lot of support from inside. So you create a framework, and in that framework you start adding in, and then the muscle and the layers and similarly, as he proceeds from one grantha to the other, one text to the other, there is more of depth that is given, more of the muscle that is given into the framework, so that when we think of it, when we come across, the understanding and the depth is clearer as we proceed. But the basics that is given in Tattva-bodha have to be remembered. The moment when we say the paṃcaprāṇa or the sūkṣma sharira or the sthula sharira, the various definitions that have been given should immediately click in our head. That this sthula sharira is something that goes through several stages of modification. Asti jayate vardhate vipranimate apakshiyate vinashyati shadvikaravat sthula shariram. Boom, boom, boom. That should come. Yeah, that is where we are building upon. That cannot be like, khatam ho gaya. तत्वबोध स्वामी जी पिछले साल का सब्जेक्ट है, खत्म हो गया, हम अब आगे बढ़ते हैं. नहीं, this is a continuation of that which you have studied, so therefore there is no break in it. That is one. Now with specificity, with this particular wave of thought that Bhagwan Bhashyakara, Bhagwan Adi Shankaracharya ji is also called Bhashyakara because he has written commentaries on the Prasthanatraya. So in his next wave of thought, he picks on these three layers. And in the 14th shloka, he is making a statement at the end of the thing. Upādhitritayādanyamātmānamavadhārayet. Understand this Atma as something other than these three upadhi. The idea is that upadhi nasha has to happen. Upadhi nasha does not mean that you destroy the sthula sharira, sūkṣma sharira and kāraṇa sharira. No, that is not how it is done. To understand that the space which is inside a pot actually is our wrong perception to conclude that it is a pot space, but that the potness is allowed to exist in the space, and we assume that there is a space inside and outside, and to know the oneness I don't need to break the pot. Similarly, here what does upadhi nasha mean? Jnana utpatti, that I have understood. In that understanding, upadhi nasha happens. Again, how do I recognize something as a upadhi? The three steps that I had said. It has to be in close proximity, and there is an appearance of transference of certain aspects, gunas, and it has to be clearly seen that that which I am calling as transference of these gunas is essentially false. No reality to it. That is when we call it as a upadhi. Now in this particular sequence, the sharira, sthula sharira, is paṃcaprāṇamanobuddhidaśendriyasamanvitam mahabhuta sambhavam bhoga ayatanam. This much was introduced even in the Tattva-bodha, that it is bhoga ayatanam, that it is the counter through which their experiences go in and out. Like, when you have to go to a movie theater and you buy a ticket, so you say which movie, and that fellow will punch out how many ever tickets you want, and then you push the money through, and then he takes it and gives you the ticket and the change back. So the counter where this exchange happens, that is called bhoga ayatanam, the abode of exchange. Now moving forward, paṃcaprāṇamanobuddhidaśendriyasamanvitam, a conglomerate, samanvitam, of what? Paṃcaprāṇa mana buddhi dasha indriyani. पंचप्राण. पंचप्राण कितने हैं? There are 5 of them, right? Prana, apana, vyana, udana, samana. Then mana, buddhi, 7 done. Dasha indriyani. 5 organs of perception, 5 organs of action. The paṃcaprāṇa, I am not dwelling much deep into it because both of them have hashed it out pretty good, pretty decent. One aspect here, if you observe, that the indriya is not given in sthula sharira. The indriya is given in sūkṣma sharira. That has to be noted down. What does it mean? That when we talk about indriyas, we are not talking about a physical aspect. It is the subtle aspect of this physical golaka. Golaka, the transactional door. Now if I have to see, I have to have these 2 transactional doors, and the capacity to see is what is called indriya. The ability to see is called indriya. Not just the jnanendriya, even the karmendriya is the capacity behind these hands to hold. The capacity, it is a subtle aspect. Even in Tattva-bodha, I very clearly remember having mentioned it, that the aspect where, say, supposing somebody's hand got amputated or leg got amputated, there is something called phantom pains. You remember? I had mentioned it then. Meaning, supposing this portion of hand is lost because of some accident or in the war or something, and in the middle of the night you will get up with a severe itch of that portion of hand which is not there. Though the indriya is not there, the indriya capacity is still there. Am I getting across? That, the jnanendriya makes it easier, karmendriya makes it a little difficult. Jnanendriya, I have the capacity to see, but the indriya golaka is not the capacity, it is just the mere instrument. The capacity is the subtler form. This is the hardware, the subtle aspect is the software, and that software is what is being called as the indriya. There are 10 of them. So the total 17 of them. Where are they made or how are they made? apaṃcīkṛtabhūtotthaṃ. Sūkṣma shariram or linga shariram. It has 2 names, or it can be said as linga shariram. Apaṃcīkṛta. So the last week chart that Divya was showing, before these 5 elements become the grossified 5 elements, at that stage, these 17 aspects are created from that rudimentary or nascent value of these 5 elements. This sūkṣmāṅgaṃ, this layer is called bhogasādhanam. If the sūkṣma layer is not functional, the eyes may be open, the ears may be open, the hands and legs may be available, but if the sūkṣma sharira has gone for a la-la land, either sleeping in or weaving its own brooding world, then it is lost in some thought. Though it is there right in front of it, the cognition doesn't happen. The awarefulness of it has not happened. I've consciously not used the word consciousness here, just so that confusion doesn't occur. So the cognition doesn't happen. The awarefulness of it doesn't happen because either it is lost in thought or in some emotion, or it is gone in its seed form to sleep. So bhogasādhanam, that it has to be available for the bhoga to happen. Now, whether you look at it in several grantha, as soon as, I'm moving to the 14th one, as soon as we talk about Karana Sharira, there's very little that is said about it. Very little. The one word that gets used quite regularly is anirvācyam. अब somebody says anirvācya, उसके बाद और क्या बोले वो? Like, you cooked something and very nicely, beautifully presented, and you give it, offer it to your family, and they take a spoon, and they have become suddenly avak. Avak meaning the speech has stopped. Why? The vocabulary cannot fathom to express how it is, how beautiful it is, or how it is. Such is the state where you say anirvācyā, anirvachaniyata, that you cannot describe it. Why? It is also that which is the anadi. Here anadi should not mean, there is another word which is often used along. Here we may not have used, Bhagavan Adi Shankaracharya ji may not have used, but it goes along with it. Anadi means, not because Adi means beginning, Anadi means that which does not have beginning. That's a very primitive way of translating it. The deeper meaning of it is that whose beginning cannot be ascertained. Now, if I ask this entire group of students that are here, how many of you know Mandarin? So you would say, no, I don't know. So since when did you not know? Right since birth. The moment you say right since birth, you did not know. My presupposition that that statement would be made for my understanding would be, oh, before birth then you did know Mandarin. No, I didn't mean that, Swamiji. You're just complicating my simple sentence. That is what it would presuppose. This aspect of not knowing cannot be ascertained. Kab se? Pata nahi. That is the best way. Therefore, anirvācyā. Right? Though that is the case, I'll try either convincing or confusing you with some newer depth or understanding here. The earlier statement that I had made was that there is Maya Shakti has avarana and a vikshepa. Right? इसी क्लास में बोला था मैंने, याद है? हाँ, ठीक है. Give me a thumbs up if you remember vaguely. I'll not ask you questions, so you can confidently give me a thumbs up if you vaguely remember the words. So I had mentioned that there is avarana, vikshepa is how we would define Maya Shakti in this particular discourse. Now with the avarana, there is the covering. Vikshepa is the projection. Right? With the, I had spoken about this, about the jnana aspect, where one aspect of it is where we are focusing. Where the avarana is, it incapacitates us from doing the discrimination of atma and anatma clearly. आवरण मीन्स क्लोजिंग. भाई सिंपल है. अगर आंखों पे पट्टी बांध दिया गया हो तो somebody has tied something on your eyes and put in front of your eyes, ये क्या है? What is this? I don't know. Why? It has been closed. Avarana. Now when will I know? Remove the avarana. इतना तक ठीक है. So the avarana shakti, when we talk about atma anatma vishleshana, atma anatma discrimination, that avarana shakti is what is removed. Now with this vikshepa shakti, to project, sthula and sūkṣma sharira have been projected. That who projects this sthula and sūkṣma sharira, the root seed cause, that which from where this projection happens, is called kārana sharira. Karana for what? For the vikshepa of the earlier two, the sthula and sūkṣma. Is that clear? This is not to be confused with the ignorance of our true nature, which is the avarana shakti, which is at the mind level, which we have already studied. Here it is talking about that other aspect of vikshepa shakti. That vikshepa shakti, because of which the sthula and sūkṣma sharira have been projected. That which is the cause for the projection of the sthula and sūkṣma sharira, therefore is called kārana sharira. Very step by step I have gone through, but I am yet to see the spark of understanding across when I am looking at people's eyes. It will come probably. Now, when we talk about the jnani, this jnani meaning the one who has realized. This jnani has efficiently worked to the understanding where the avarana shakti has been removed. Vikshepa shakti at that point I had said cannot be removed, but since it does not have the effect or impact of it, its presence or absence does not make any difference, because now the jnani functions from the understanding that that which is only a projection. That how do I see it? I see it only as a projected reality, not as a real reality. Right? Therefore, this jnani still has the vikshepa of sthula sharira and sūkṣma sharira. Until when? Until the prarabdha continues. Prarabdha of this conglomerate of body, mind and intellect continues. Until then there will be this body and the sthula sharira and sūkṣma sharira. But that vikshepa does not hinder, does not have an impact on that jnani's experience. Why? Avarana is gone. Confusion is not there. Now, at that point, the example that was given was with the breeze, the cloud goes away. The cloud being removed by the breeze is not creating the sun. That which was blocking my vision in looking at that sun, that has been removed. As soon as that is removed, that which already is illumining, that gets revealed. Why? Its nature is self-illumination. So that aspect is already taken care of. Otherwise, what will happen if this vikshepa shakti of the kārana sharira is not there? As soon as realization, No body, no mind, nothing, because the upadhi nasha has happened. Why karana sharira is destroyed? The impact of karana sharira is destroyed. The vikshepa shakti does not become a hindrance or disturbance or a nuisance factor any further. Why? It is seen merely as a projected reality. Halloween time, recent. You are walking and people have these crazy creative ideas. And as you are walking, suddenly from the chair, the skeletal being that was sitting there suddenly sprung up. Motion sensor, and it suddenly sprung up. You almost startled, tripped, almost were about to fall, balanced, looked at it, and you're about to scream. You are about to, it was there. But then you looked closer. The moment that understanding has happened, what has happened? Its impact that can create that fear and anxiety, that is gone. Why? You understood its reality. ये वो नहीं है जो मैं समझा था. And this cannot create any kind of confusion in my head. Similarly is with this projected reality. So what happens when this jnani, pay attention to the next part. When this jnani has already seen the avarana, the closure has been, the thing that was veiling has been removed, the body mind will still continue, meaning this sthula sukshma sharira will still be projected. It is only when they leave this body, at that moment, leaving this body in this complete understanding, when they leave this body, the karana sharira gets destroyed. When this karana sharira gets destroyed is when it is called or recognized. When you read Bhagavatam or Mahabharata or Ramayana, the word that is used is called paṃcaprāṇamanobuddhidaśendriyasamanvitam vilīnaha. Their 5 elements have been merged back into totality. But for the rest of them who leave the body, die, it is called paṃcaprāṇam gataha. Paṃcaprāṇam gataha. They have gone back to the motion of these 5 elements, not transcended it. But whereas for a jnani, the videha mukti, when it happens, that final layer of karana shariratva is completely destroyed. For the rest of us, pay attention. Jnani ka to party time hai, like for us, that is where more we have to focus. Because that karana sharira does not get destroyed even at the destruction of the appearing projection of sthula sukshma sharira, that karana sharira becomes the cause for my continuation of rebirth. Not only that, it becomes the cause for my rebirth. When pralaya happens at the end of this creation cycle, when the pralaya happens, this karana sharira still exists, and all of that karana shariras are gathered. That totality of karana sharira pressures the totality to create an opportunity for creation, for next surge of creation. This continues to move on. So and it is a cyclical motion. So when was it? When is not the criteria. How can be explained? That karana sharira is the cause for the next creation as well, next rebirth as well. Therefore, this karana sharira has to be completely evaporated, destroyed. And that can happen only at the end of the life of the jnani, not until then. Hope with this extra information, which this just one line doesn't give. ये जो एक सेंटेंस है ना यहाँ पे, just saying that anādyavidyā'nirvācyā kāraṇopādhirucyate. I could have just said two words and then moved on. Anadi, that whose future, that whose beginning cannot be ascertained. Avidya, avidya meaning ignorance. Anirvācyā, that which is indescribable. This is called Karan Sharira. Janda uthao. I am done. Now I have given you further steps of understanding this avidya and breaking it down with the vikshepa and the avarana shakti, so that the two aspects of it can be understood clearly and it be appreciated logically when applied, that this karana sharira is talking about the vikshepa shakti, and that vikshepa shakti will not be gone until the prarabdha comes to an end. इतना समझ में आया तो एकदम करेक्ट. Clear? So please re-listen to this last half an hour again for further clarity. And if there is any questions based off of it, please do ping me on the group in Signal and we can have a discussion on that, so that when we move forward from here to the next shloka, there is clarity and not confusion. Okay? I'll stop here. Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavasishyate. Om Shant Shant Shantihi. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Take care everyone. I think in the group the link for this video YouTube has been provided. So please re-avail it and go through the full step-by-step process of it, so that there can be a discussion on it. अगर पूरा समझ में आ गया कोई चिंता नहीं, very good. But if